Well, hello there, my friend. It's me, Stu, here for you, and we are back today where I'm going to be sharing with you my 5-part framework for teaching anything so that people get results. And ultimately, when we are teaching and sharing, that's exactly why we're doing it, is so that we can help people get results. Now, I will tell you, the fun part about today is that I'm participating in an all-day extravaganza because we are hosting a clubathon. And a clubathon is, well, it's a room on Clubhouse where we're talking about building your audience. And today we invited a whole bunch of amazing guests to come and share. And I'm just taking a quick teeny weeny break to come and share with you here today, and certainly to encourage you, if you are on Clubhouse, to make sure you come and join us for that as well. But let's talk about, how do we teach so that people get results? And the reason I believe this to be so important is that if we are selling, whether it's our courses, our programs, or more specifically, our memberships, that's my world, right? That's the world that I've lived in now for, since 2008, helping literally tens of thousands of entrepreneurs launch, grow, and scale profitable memberships. And what I can tell you is that the long-term success of a membership is 100% connected to the results and progress that people make. So if we know that, then the thing that we should be pouring energy and focus on is, how do we teach and share in a way that helps people make progress? And so that's what I want to cover for you today, whether it's inside of a paid program or membership, or whether it's free content here on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, Clubhouse, YouTube, whatever it might be. So whatever platforms that you might be using to communicate with your audience and to build an audience, and or however you are teaching and delivering content, whether it be inside of a membership, in a course, or paid program, what I'm going to outline for you today is going to be very relevant, and you can use this day in and day out. And just to showcase it, this is not something that I just talk about and don't use myself. This is something that I use all the time. Here is an example of a podcast that that I was mapping out using this 5-part framework that I'm about to outline for you. My kids are so fun. They're leaving me little messages in my journal here. Let me show you another example. Here we go, right here. Here's another example. Another podcast episode right there. Here's another example. This is another notepad. I use this same process every single time. Look, here it is again. Same process. Can you see it here? So this process is something that I use for virtually everything that I teach. So for example, even if I'm going to be spontaneously asked to speak, either on a physical real stage, which has happened before, right? I was in the audience, and the person hosting the event said, "Hey, Stu, would you be able to jump up on stage and just talk 5-10 minutes about XYZ?" Or in this case, it was about memberships. And I was like, sure. And so same thing. Like if I was spontaneously asked to teach, I would do the same thing, which is I sat down and I literally mapped out these 5-part framework that I'm going to walk you through. I went out on stage and was able to teach comfortably because I had this framework to work from. Or whether I'm mapping out podcast episodes, I use the same framework. Whether I am mapping out lessons here, like on Facebook Live, I use the same framework. Or if I'm teaching lessons inside of our membership, I use the same framework. So the beauty about having a framework like this is you can expand it. So the lessons can be longer. You can contract it. They can be shorter, but you've got a track to run on. And most importantly, it's easy for your audience to digest what it is that you are sharing. So this 5-part framework for teaching virtually anything so that people get results is something that you will use day in and day out. First and foremost, it starts with the hook. Now, what do I mean by hook? Well, the hook is the thing that's going to grab people's attention. So I always like to think of the hook like the headline for your piece of content. If it's free piece of content, like what's the thing that's going to grab people's attention when they're scrolling by? Like that is important. And we don't just want to dismiss it or, leave it as a second thought. We want to pay attention to it. We want to be intentional about it. So think about the hook for this piece of content. It's the 5-part framework, right? It's a framework that you can follow to get the results, which is, certainly helping your people make more progress with what it is that you teach. So the hook is really, really important, and we got to pay attention to that. And we want it to spark curiosity. We want it to grab people's attention. We want people to understand the benefit that they're going to get from what it is that we are about to teach. But the other thing that's important about the hook is it creates focus. Years ago, I attended a training by the amazing speaker and trainer. His name's Ken Davis. And he said, so often people get up on stage and they speak, but they are not clear about what the purpose is behind the message that they are sharing. So they speak and they talk and yada, yada, yada. And then he said, if you were to go and ask an audience member what it is that they just learned, he said the vast majority of the time, the audience wouldn't be able to tell you. And not only that, but if they did tell you, the message would be totally random and different with all the different people that you ask. He said, so one of the most important things, and I agree with him, is to get clarity around what's the purpose behind what it is that you are about to share. That, when you encompass that in the hook, oh my goodness, do you have a powerful combination? So number one, it starts with the hook. Number two is it starts with, the next part of that is a story. Now, the reason that stories are so powerful is because people connect and relate to stories. They also make what you're about to teach memorable. So people may not necessarily remember all the fine details of what you're going to teach, but more often than not, they remember the story. I think of stories a lot like music. Like the other day, yesterday, in fact, we were taking the kids to school, and we had the tunes cranked, and we were just singing along. And the song from Madonna came on the radio. And if you watched my Instagram stories, you would have seen me singing and dancing to the song. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I hadn't heard this song in years. And then all of a sudden the song comes on, and magically my brain just instantly knows the words, to the song. How does that happen? Right? Like, how does that happen? You think of like all the different songs that we've heard in our lifetime. And when a song comes on that we just remember the words and the lyrics. Well, a story is a lot like that. For those of us that aren't musically talented and gifted, stories are very similar in that when we share them, people remember the stories more often than they remember the details of what it is that you shared. But inside that story is the lesson, right? So one of the things I want you to think about is that when you are teaching anything, if you can tie a story into it, the content that you're about to share becomes that much more memorable and that much more powerful. So number one, it starts with a hook, right? We've got to grab people's attention. What's in it for them? Get clear about that hook. Spend time on that hook. The hook matters. And the hook, by the way, is the title of your Facebook Live, the title of your Instagram Live, the title of your YouTube, the title of your Clubhouse room, the title of your subject line, so to speak. But it is the thing that grabs people's attention. It is super important we pay attention to that. Number two is a story. And this is what makes what you're about to share memorable. And if you don't have a story, then one of the things I'd encourage you to do is think about an example that you can set up what it is that you're about to teach. So for example, here's a story. A couple years ago, I was doing a live meetup for our tribe community. And we had just over about 100 or so people who had come to the meetup. And in it, there was a woman in the audience. Her name was Ginger. And we were talking to her about growing her audience and so forth. And she said she was in the really early stages of growing that audience. And I said, okay, great. I said, so what do you think should be the next step for you as you continue to, move forward in your business? She said, well, I definitely need to grow my audience. I said, okay, great. I said, what do you think is the first step in growing your audience? And she said, well, I've learned from you, and you talk about picking a platform and being consistent on that platform. I said, okay, great. I said, so what would be a platform that you would feel comfortable with? She said, probably, Facebook. I said, okay. So would you be open to, doing a Facebook Live? And she's like, yeah, but honestly, I don't know what I'm going to teach. I don't know how to, teach it and say it. And funny enough, we walked through this 5-part framework. And I said, okay. I said, well, let's just walk through this framework. and we got out like a flip chart, and we mapped out these five things that I'm walking with you. So we started with the hook, right? And I asked her specifically, I said, is there a problem or challenge that your market faces that you hear come up on a regular basis? And she said, yes. And she, by the way, was an interior designer. So we were talking about interior design. And so, yeah, she gave me a problem that comes up. And so we framed that into the hook, right? So that immediately grabs people's attention, because if they got that problem, they're going to want to listen to that training. And then I said, do you have a story that relates to it? She said, well, I don't really have stories of my own. I said, okay, wait. I said, do you have clients that you've worked with? And she said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, and do you have clients that have experienced that problem? She said, well, yeah. I said, bada bing, bada boom. There's your story, right? So you give a little context. You start telling the story of the person that you have helped, or a client or so forth, that was experiencing the very problem that you're about to teach people on how to solve. So that's an example of being able to quickly use a story to give context to what it is that you're about to teach, right? Okay. Number one starts with the hook. Number two is the story. Number three are the lessons. Now, here's what I can tell you. How many of us can relate to listening, being in the car, listening to a podcast, as an example, that goes on for maybe 60, 90 minutes, let's say, and is jam-packed full of all kinds of lessons. And then you get to the destination that you're going to, and you can't remember all of the lessons learned. You probably remember one or two of the strategies. And more often than not, it's the last one or two strategies that were shared, because they're the ones that are most fresh in your mind, right? This happens to me all the time, because my car drive to our office is about 20 minutes. So if I was listening to, a 45, 60-minute podcast, it would be, the journey there and then the journey home. And by the time I got home, I've already forgotten what I listened to in the morning, right? And I would used to get so frustrated about this. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is, when you're sharing lessons, more often than not, if you can distill it down to 3 to 5 primary lessons, 3 to 5 primary lessons. Now, if you find that you've got more than 3 to 5, then break it up into another piece of content. Whether it be another lesson, another live, whatever it might be, another training, but don't try to jam it all in, because people can't remember it all. And then when they can't remember it all, they don't use it. If they don't use it, they don't make the progress. And that's where the whole thing begins to crumble. We're looking to create content that people are going to remember, and they're going to use, and they're going to get value from, right? So this is about this 5-part framework where you can teach anything that gets people results, right? So when you're thinking about the lessons, 3 to 5 lessons is my max that I'm working with, so that it's easy to remember, and therefore it's easy to implement. Almost always my go-to is 3 lessons. Interestingly enough, look, here's a mind map. This is a podcast episode that I'm going to be releasing soon. How many lessons? Lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, right? Lesson 1, 2, 3. Almost always it's my go-to. 3 lessons, because it's much easier to manage and much easier to remember. And when it's easy to remember, people are going to implement it. So, number 1, hook. Number 2, story. Number 3, lessons. Number 4, call to action. What do you want people to do? And whenever I ask this question, oftentimes I'll get feedback from people that will say, yeah, but I don't have a thing. I don't have, a place to send them. I don't have a website set up. I don't have an offer. I don't have a list builder. I don't have this. I don't have that. They give me all the reasons why they can't have a call to action. Look, at the end of anything that you are sharing, you've got to give clarity around what you want people to do next. Don't just share stuff for the sake of sharing stuff. It's got to have a purpose. Now, the purpose could be you want people to take a certain action. So what might that next action be? Purpose might be you want people to click on a link. Give clarity around what that link is. Purpose might be you want people to share the piece of content that you just delivered. Encourage them to share that piece of content. Give them instruction. The call to action might be you want them to go opt in and download something. give them the clarity of that next step. But whatever it is, you've got to have a call to action that is clear so that people know what the next step is. So even if you don't have an offer for people to buy, or you don't have an opt-in for people to go download or subscribe to, you can still give many calls to action. You can ask people to comment. You can ask people to like. You can ask people to share. You can ask people to subscribe. You can do all of these different things. Or you can just give clarity around what you want them to do next with what you just taught. Like, what's the next step you want them to take? Whatever it is, you've got to give a clear call to action, and it must be obvious in terms of what that next step is. Don't try to cloud it with a whole bunch of things that they can do. As much as possible, you want one clear next step. Okay. So number one is the hook. That's the thing that's going to grab people's attention. So pay attention to the titles of your Facebook Lives or your Instagram Lives or your YouTube Lives or your Clubhouse rooms or whatever piece of content that you're creating. The title matters. The title matters. Copywriting matters. Words matter. Make sure you pay attention to that, because we want that piece of content to grab people's attention. That's the purpose of the hook. Second is the story. People relate and connect to stories. So include a story, because that's what makes your content you're about to share memorable. Number three are the lessons. Never try to jam more than 5 lessons in a particular piece of content. If you find that you've got more than that, that's totally cool. Just break it into multiple pieces of content. But the human brain can't digest more than 3 to 5. My go-to is 5, which makes it easier to remember, which makes it easier for people to implement and therefore get results. The fourth step is the call to action. Be clear on what you want people to do, right? Every piece of content should have a purpose. It should give clarity for people in terms of what you want them to do next. And the fifth part of the 5-part framework is a summary. You've heard me summarize multiple times right here in this lesson itself, the 5-part framework. You just heard me go talk about the hook, the story, the lesson, the call to action, and the summary. You know, back in the day, I would never forget a speaker by the name of Charlie Tremendous Jones. And he was this just incredible human being who did so much for the world, but he was an amazing speaker as well. And I heard him speak a couple times, and each time that I heard him, I just, oh gosh, his message landed. You know, he moved me, emotionally. He got me to take action, which I loved. But one of the things that he said that I've never forgotten, he said, never tell a story. He said, you never tell a story without a point, and you never make a point without a story. That was one thing. The second thing that he said was, tell him what you're going to tell him, and tell him what you told him. Tell him what you're going to tell him, and tell him what you told him. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, is like wrapping it all up with a summary so that you bring it all together, right? It's like you're putting a final bow on the thing that you are teaching, because when people are hearing, they're going to hear different bits and pieces. Like you hearing me right now, you're hearing different bits and pieces. But the fact that I have summarized this 5-part framework multiple times, hook, story, lesson, call to action, summary. There, I did it again. I have summarized that multiple times. Each time it's creating more and more clarity. And more importantly, it's making it easier and easier for you to remember and therefore take action on. So this 5-part framework can be used for virtually any type of content that you're looking to create. And now that I've told myself, when you go and listen to the Marketing Your Business podcast, you're going to hear this framework used in every single episode. Like every single episode, I lead with the hook. Next, I dive right into a story to make it relevant. Then I deliver the lesson. And almost always it's a 3 lessons. Then there's a call to action, and then I summarize it and wrap it all up in virtually every single episode. And I use the same framework, whether it be in a podcast, in a Facebook Live like this, lessons inside of a paid membership or course, or even when I am delivering a presentation from stage. The same framework can be used, and it can be expanded, it can be shrunk down, but the framework stays the same. Hook, story, lesson, call to action, summary. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. And one of the things I want to encourage you to do is that if you have ideas on how you can take what it is that you're teaching and build a business around it in the form of a membership, and you're just not sure, I don't know if my market would be a good market for a membership, I want you to go to gettribeguide.com, because this is where I unpack this, right? I talk about I answer the top questions that I get asked about memberships. And I not only give answers to that, but specifically, I give you a ton of different examples. So if you're thinking about a membership and you're thinking about how to take the content that you're creating and turning it into a paid recurring revenue stream, I encourage you to go and get the free guide at gettribeguide.com. It's all free, where I answer the top questions and we provide a ton of examples, and you can get it right away by going to gettribeguide.com. So my friend, listen, I'm not sure what you're teaching and sharing, but I just want to encourage you that when you package it in a way that is easy for people to understand and remember, they're far more likely going to put it into practice. And when that happens, they're going to get results. And that's what creates word of mouth. It's the reason why, we have all kinds of people who are sending me messages right now as we speak, asking like, when is the next, opening for your program Tribe? And that's happening, by the way, April 22nd. But the reason that there's so much excitement around it is because for years now, we're going into our 5th year. This is what we focus on, is helping people get results with what it is that we're teaching. And because we teach it in a way that is easy to digest and easy to implement, therefore people make more progress. So this skill that we're talking about right here, right now, being able to teach so that people get results, it's important, and it shows up in all areas of your business. So always remember, come back to the 5-part framework: hook, story, lesson, call to action, summary. Hopefully that's been helpful. Keep me posted on how you use it, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Go to gettribeguide.com to get the free guide. In the meantime, just keep on teaching, keep on serving, and we'll keep on making a difference. You're awesome. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.